David DeGuzman inside the NBC4 Digital Center for the latest edition of the Digital Sports Roundtable. We are marking 1 year to go until the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics, which is hard to believe because we were just coming off the Paris Summer Olympics in 2024, but we're already looking forward to the Winter Olympics, and here to help me with that, we bring in digital producer Orri Benatar. We actually have a lot to talk about today because as we're marking a year to go, we also have some big news here in Columbus. It's been kind of a period of departures for Central Ohio. Obviously, we've seen both coordinators and an offensive line coach leave the Buckeyes after their national championship, and it turns out the Crew not immune from those departures as well. We're obviously talking about Cucho Hernandez leaving to go to La Liga, which I'm very happy for him. He's going to Real Betis, and yeah, happy for him, but you know, or he's been such a big part of the Crew these last couple of seasons. The way I think about him is the way I think fans thought about, you know, Jeremiah Smith and the way he's able to score on the football field. I'm amazed at how Cucho is able to get some of those strikes on the soccer pitch. Your initial reaction to how Cucho is moving on to bigger, better things, but left his mark here in Columbus?
Similar to when Lucas Zelarayan and Aiden Morris left. Bittersweet. It's good business for the team. Just like with the Zelarayan, Morris, now this Cucho transfer, you have a player that you get, you know, at their peak, and you're able to sell them for a profit. And that's what happened with Cucho Hernandez, reported around a $16 million sale to Real Betis with add-ons. Some say he could have gotten more. I mean, again, this is one of the top players in MLS last year. Second in MVP voting. Only person in front of him was Lionel Messi. And some people say Cucho maybe should have won the MVP, but
I would say that.
Yeah, well, but no, I mean, he was just a phenomenal player, a fan favorite here in Columbus. He certainly captured the imaginations of soccer fans here, and some of the most iconic goals in Crew history. His penalty in the MLS Cup final, his Leagues Cup final goal in stoppage time to win that tournament, both against LAFC at Lower.com Field. So, but seeing the way that they reacted to the Lucas sale and to the Aiden Morris sale, I think the front office will react to the Cucho sale very similarly and find another, you know, top talent. You think of the guys that they picked up after the Lucas Zelarayan transfer. You know, they won MLS Cup a few months after their best player left, and then you think of last year with Aiden Morris leaving, you know, turning around. Diego Rossi's on the team. He was a transfer that came in through those sales. So it's good front office business. It's a shame that we're not going to see Cucho Hernandez in black and gold anymore, but yeah, for him to move to a top 10 La Liga team that is competing in a European competition, that's a huge step up for him. And the biggest thing for Cucho's standpoint now, he's now going to be able to play top-of-the-line La Liga games in preparation for the World Cup as he hopes to make Colombia's squad next summer, or 2 summers from now.
Yeah, I'm going to miss Cucho. I remember this last season that he was with the Crew, he made a real effort to learn English and to be able to, you know, talk to reporters and be able to have longer interviews and conversations. He did such a great job with that. I think he really thought he would be here for a longer time. I know he had aspirations of maybe one day being captain, but there, you know, I could tell also that he wants to play soccer at the highest level possible. And I think La Liga is just such a big opportunity. You really can't pass that up. And I wish him the best because I know once he does big things there, we're going to look at him and say, you know, he used to play for the Crew, and that's going to be amazing to see. We'll talk more about the Crew down the road as we get closer to the season kicking off, but let's get to what we're here for. 1 year to go until the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics. It's really exciting because like the Paris Olympics, I think people are going to be looking to these games to really inject some new energy into the Winter Olympic movement, especially after kind of going through the last 2 Winter Olympics were in Asia. Pyeongchang was great. Beijing obviously was very different because of the pandemic. And I think the Olympics lost a lot of its luster for a variety of reasons taking place in China. So I think people are looking to these games coming up as a way to really spark some new energy into it. It's interesting also, Orri, because the Winter Olympics are always held over a vast geographical area, purely because, you know, mountains are in one place and you have the actual city in another. So you think Vancouver, Whistler, Park City, and Salt Lake City. The Beijing Olympics were also hugely spread out, but these games are kind of spread out on purpose. it's taking place in obviously Milan, but Cortina hosted the 1956 Winter Olympics. Actually, was the first Italian city to host an Olympics, winter or summer. So there's a lot of history going into this. Let's talk about the geography and just the place, because obviously place plays such a role in an Olympics.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with place, at least from a viewing standpoint for Americans, this is the first time in over a decade that we don't have a Winter Olympics in Asia. So from a viewing standpoint, similar to Paris, it's a 6-hour time difference. Stuff's going to be live in the morning and the afternoon on NBC4, Peacock, NBC Universal channels. They're going to show every event live, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But, you know, Milan, obviously, you know, this is the second most populous city in Italy, and it has such a rich sports history, thinking of, you know, the two big soccer clubs there, AC Milan and Internazionale, their stadium San Siro hosting the opening ceremony on February 6, 2026, so a year to go. And then you're going to have the closing ceremony in Verona at, you know, a 2,000-year-old venue that's used to host operas and concerts. So that's going to be a very cool environment. And then obviously Cortina, those mountain ranges in Italy, you know, used almost every year for alpine skiing competitions. There's going to be a new hockey arena built in Milan. So it's going to be very spread out. You're going to learn a lot about the country, very similar to what happened in 06 with Torino, where you kind of learn a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to have Italy back in the Olympic hosting rotation, and seeing a big city like Milan host these games.
And Cortina, obviously, also with, I mean, just northern Italy itself, very used to hosting a lot of World Cup skiing events. The skiing tradition there is going to be great. One interesting note, there's also a slight possibility that part of these games might take place here in America, because there's a whole thing about the bobsled and the luge, the speed track, basically, the sled sports. We don't know yet for sure if the bobsled, luge, skeleton track will be ready in time in the Cortina area, and so there's a backup plan if it's not ready, that those sports might take place in Lake Placid.
That's something.
So yeah, and obviously the hope is that it'll take place in Italy, although it's not a terrible backup plan. But it's just case to show that the Winter Olympics continue to evolve, especially when we're thinking about the longevity of the Winter Olympics with climate change, global warming, how many cities can actually host the Winter Olympics in the future. People are starting to think about, you know, who has sleds and, you know, these sled tracks, that there's only a few of these really around the world that can have these sled sports happen. And it's interesting to see that they're thinking about having an event take place not even in the same continent.
Well, in general, I think that kind of leads into, honestly, what we're seeing with some of these bigger sporting events. Paris Olympics, surfing was in Tahiti, so that's in a completely different country. You think to the LA games in 2028, softball and canoeing is going to be in Oklahoma City.
Right.
And then also you look at the World Cup, you know, next year, the men's World Cup will be in 3 countries, the US, Canada, Mexico. And then the 2030 World Cup is going to be in 6 countries. So maybe there is this, the IOC and FIFA kind of thinking through, maybe we don't want to put everything all in one place. It might just be easier to spread it out.
I love it and hate it at the same time. I get it from a organization standpoint, especially for the Winter Olympics, where you need mountains and you need snow. You can have like the indoor sports really anywhere, but you need snow, and you need a track. And those tracks are not easy to just create. You can't just build them.
No, they're very complicated
and cost so much money too. So. And obviously there's a push with the Olympic movement to not be building things. So I'm optimistic that all the sports will be taking place in Italy, but it's just one interesting thing. Let's talk about some of the new things we're going to be seeing at these Olympics too. There is one sport that I don't think a lot of people have really heard of, but it's in the Winter Olympics. Can you tell us about that?
Ski mountaineering. So, I mean, one social media post, this was like, what, 8 years ago now, really stuck with me. If you really think about it, every single Winter Olympic sport is about sliding. You're either sliding
and going downhill.
Yeah, you're either sliding on snow or you're sliding on ice. This is no different. You're sliding on snow. Ski mountaineering, basically, think about it as like you're going up a mountain and then you're going down a mountain. So there's going to be 3 events. There'll be a men's sprint, a women's sprint, and a mixed event. So again, very similar to what we're seeing with the Olympic movement in the past couple of years, adding mixed events, but just again, another new sport to add into the bunch. So still learning a little bit about it. There'll be some new events. For the first time, we'll have women's doubles luge, Certainly an interesting event to watch. If you watch the men's doubles luge, it's very interesting to see two people just sitting on that thing going down that slide.
There's too many awkward internet jokes that the internet creates about that sport too.
First time we'll have 2 women's ski jumping events, women's large hill getting added. I think the one I'm the most excited for, depending on if it's in Italy or the US, we don't know yet, is the mixed skeleton relay. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
I like that event.
That will be really cool. And then there'll be double moguls for freestyle skiing, where you'll actually have people racing. So the moguls is the skiing event with the little hills, and then you do some flips. It's usually only one competitor, but you're going to have 2 people going at the same time racing and trying to score points. So there's a couple of new events added in there.
They kind of did that with alpine skiing too, where
and
they
snowboarding.
Had the head-to-head. Yeah, I think it started with snowboarding, and then they moved it on with alpine skiing. I like it, and I think those events tended to take place towards the end of the game, so you kind of gave a reason. I haven't looked at the schedule yet, but I liked it at the end because it kind of gave like a team aspect to those sports. That's normally like an individual kind of thing. So I thought that was pretty cool. I always love when there's new sports, especially during the Winter Olympics. There's less sports, obviously, than in the Summer Games, but I like when they add new events. I thought when they did with the Summer Games with the kayak cross.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
That was awesome.
I'm such a traditionalist when it comes to the Olympics, but I do like it when they start to put in some new events just to kind of keep it fresh. So.
Right, and it's also to help with the youth movement. You think of the Winter Olympics, 30 years ago, you would almost be considered like blasphemous to suggest to have like these extreme sports be in there, like snowboarding and like big air and things like that. And now they're all in these Olympics, try to attract, a younger audience in there. And at the same time, because you're more limited with these games for new sports and new events, I think it's good that there's some creativity coming in, adding some of these new events, new ways to think about these sports. But the thing is what other new winter sports exist that aren't in the Winter Olympics?
Yeah.
Like floorball or something.
I want to see like snow volleyball, like beach volleyball, but on snow. It does exist. I've seen it.
That would be something.
Yeah, it would be different. And I think if they want to go that beach volleyball route like they do in the Summer Games, I think maybe snow volleyball would be pretty cool. We have a year to talk about emerging stars and people to watch, but let's kind of give a brief overview with the stars we're going to be looking out for. There's going to be some familiarity. Michaela Schifrin definitely making her way back. She had that huge crash earlier this year that kind of impaled her a little bit. So she's recovering from that. Funny enough, as we're taping this, the Alpine Skiing World Championships will be taking place later this week out in Europe. Other names that I kind of had in my mind, and know we're going to talk about it, Orri, Jordan Stoltz, who just competed in the ISU Long Track Speed Skating World Cup in Milwaukee. Came away with a pretty good haul of hardware there. But yeah, who are some of the people we're going to be looking out for in a year?
Well, I think, like you said, some of the familiar faces that were sort of the poster athletes for the Beijing Games in 2022, Schifrin being one of them. Of course, a disappointing Olympics in Beijing, didn't come away with a medal, had the 2 crashes. So we'll see if she can kind of redeem herself in Cortina this time around. Chloe Kim going for the 3-peat in the half pipe, I think, is going to be a huge story. No snowboarder has ever 3-peated gold medals. Of course, Shaun White won 3 half pipe golds, but he didn't win them in a row. Eileen Gu, I think, is going to be another one. Of course, was a mega star overnight from those Beijing Games, 2 golds and 1 other medal in freestyle skiing. Chinese American, so obviously the fact that it was in Beijing was a big deal. She represents China, but she was born in San Francisco. She'll be back. She could become the most decorated freestyle skier ever if she wins a couple of medals in Italy. I think Lindsey Vonn is going to be a fascinating story, coming out of retirement, 40 now, trying to get into her 5th Olympics. She wants to get to the Olympics and then say, I'm done for good now. So I don't know if she's going to be competing for any medals necessarily. We'll see how the next couple of months go for her if she qualifies, but I think that's a great story. And then I think the figure skating, you've got a couple of really big names in there. Ilya Malinin, obviously, for the men is huge. Quad God is going to,
new Quad God.
I think he could be the star.
He did 6 quads in that free skate that won the national championship.
I couldn't even do a turn, let alone skate properly. So what he does is just otherworldly. I honestly think he could be the star of these Olympic Games, just based on his athleticism and what he's been able to accomplish so far in the American and the world stage. Amber Glenn's kind of the person to watch for the American women. I mean, 2002 is the last time an American woman won a solo gold medal. Sarah Hughes back in Salt Lake City.
That's right.
So it's been some time. And then obviously big question mark for all these different sports and whether or not the Americans will be competing for gold. Will there be a Russian team? Will they be neutral athletes? Will they be there? That is a huge question mark that is underlying for these games that we still don't have a concrete answer to.
I'm really looking forward to these games in general for a lot of those names you just mentioned. Obviously here in Central Ohio, we look to the Ohio State women's hockey team because
pretty
I feel
much
like that entire team sends all their players out to the Winter Olympics in whatever country that they're representing. I'm always looking forward to seeing that aspect and really just, have a Winter Olympics that we really haven't had since the Vancouver Games. I mean, Sochi was kind of weird in 2014. Pyeongchang, I thought was great. It was just in Asia, and like, no offense to Asian countries hosting games, it's different for us in America where you're not awake to see a lot of those moments happen. But I do think there was a lot of magic with those Winter Olympics, and we haven't had a normal Olympics since then, obviously, because of a normal Winter Olympics because of COVID. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of the magic come back to these games. And I'll leave you with one final note. The U.S. has not medaled in biathlon ever at the Olympics. That's the one sport that they're still searching for an Olympic medal in. I wonder if 2026 might be the time. There's some returners as I'm looking at the team that's going to the World Championships. There's some returners from Beijing. So
we'll kind of see with that, but I still think the biggest highlight for me for this Olympics is NHL players back.
Oh, 100%. It's just different.
It's just going to make that tournament must watch, and I agree with you. I think this Olympics could have the potential to match a Vancouver with the type of hype and anticipation, especially because the men's hockey tournament has all of these stars that have never been to the Olympics, and we'll get a taste of that with the Four Nations tournament coming next week, seeing a Canadian, U.S., Swedish, and Finnish team compete. Zach Werenski is on the U.S. team. We'll see how much he plays, and we'll see how much some of these other guys play, but the fact that Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon, just to name three huge NHL stars, have never played in Olympics, and we're finally going to be able to see them play in an Olympics is going to be fantastic. And that, for me, I think really adds that extra pizzazz to the Winter Games that I think it does need, because you need some athletes that from a day-to-day basis. With the Summer Games, you get that with NBA players, professional soccer players, men's and women's, these sports that you watch year in and year out. Obviously, the track and swimming and gymnastics stars. The Winter Games, figure skating, obviously kind of being that poster child sport, alpine skiing in there, but having NHL hockey players, and then obviously
it makes a big difference.
It makes a huge difference, and obviously for the women, there'll be plenty of Buckeye representation in Beijing. You had 6 OSU players representing 5 different countries. Multiple of them will likely make their nation's rosters, but the thing is with the women's tournament, it's always Canada versus the United States. Whereas with the men, I think Canada and the U.S. will be the best teams, but if there's a Russian team, they'll be very good. Sweden and Finland are going to be very good. So Germany, I think, is going to be good too with Draisaitl.
The U.S. women looking for some revenge from the
definitely,
loss to Canada.
Definitely looking
Beijing
for some
Olympics.
revenge.
The Milan Cortina Winter Olympics. It starts February 6, 2026. Of course, you can watch all the coverage you could ever want and more here on NBC4, as well as Peacock and all the platforms you can ever think of. Orri, appreciate it. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Oh, yeah.
For now, that's it for the NBC4 Sports Digital Roundtable. We will catch you next time.